So this was a garden we installed last fall, and originally the gutter would come down the downspout, and there's a little pop-up drain right here at the bottom of the garden, and as all the water drained into that one downspout, it would come up right here and just sort of kind of flood into the streets, into the sidewalk, and as it did that, pull all the particulates from the cars, fertilizer from the lawn, pesticides and whatnot, go right into our stream. So I suggested to the homeowner that we would change the location of the pop-up, instead of at the bottom of the garden, move it up to the top of the garden, right here. And so now what happens, when it rains, the water starts to percolate at the very beginning, goes through this little network of swales, flows into the second swale, and all the water in theory will stay on site, giving the plants a chance to take up the pollutants that come with the water, clean it, and also percolate into the ground and recharge the aquifer, requiring less water and less stormwater running into the drain. So when doing this type of project, it's really important to choose the appropriate plants. In this case, we choose California native plants. In the swale area, plants that don't mind being in the water during heavy rain events. They can get their feet a little bit wet, and these are all in the low parts of the garden, with some higher up grasses on the side to kind of fill in the banks and hold the soil in place. Some additional grasses that don't mind being really inundated with water, but again, dry conditions in the summer, and it's positioned right near our drain to help with erosion control and also aesthetics, and also to hide the plastic. Not the best looking sometimes. So with all of our projects, it's really important to choose the appropriate plants for the sites and the soil conditions. For this particular garden, we're out here in Morgan Hill. Very clay soils, which can in some instances be bad, but we use it to our advantage by using native plants. So this is a California desert willow. I think it's a great example of how native plants can still look very colorful and still look very neat in the garden. It's a very long bloom period, requires very little water, and has a lot of habitat value for our local birds and bees. All right, so another one of my favorite plants to use, which is a silver carpet. Very low growing, very colorful, very long bloom period, requires almost no water and very little fertilizer, if any at all. Also to the garden, kind of a California favorite. We have a low growing manzanita, some Pacific Coast iris, some Mendocino reedgrass, and some juncus. Some of our favorite plants to use in many of our different gardens. Moving on to another section of the garden that has a little bit more shade. So to accommodate the different microclimates of every garden is going to have a few different exposure areas. This is definitely the shadier part of the garden, choosing some local ferns, some California rhododendron, and heuchera, also known as coral bells, to really accommodate this sort of shadowy pocket of the garden. One of my favorite parts of this project is this rain tank, 2,300 gallons, collecting water off the roof right here. And if you notice, it has that small box right there is a filter to help keep leaves and small debris and critters outside of the tank, which helps to maintain the cleanliness of the water. The cleaner the water goes in, the cleaner it'll stay in the tank. To utilize the water in a tank, we also installed this 1/2 horsepower pump. When the irrigation system kicks on in the backyard, the pump will turn on and send water to the valves. If you want to use the water in a tank without having to send it to irrigation, you can simply turn the handle here on the hose and run a small hose out into the garden. You can hear the pump turning on.